Hey there, wonderful ELA teachers. Now that you have had the opportunity to view the overview of Making Thinking Visible, you have the basic understanding of how each routine works to bring student thinking out of the mind and into a place where you can observe it. We will now practice applying these thinking routines with ELA content to begin to explore how we can design instruction that will cause students to engage in the thinking crucial to our complex ELA skills. For the remainder of this video, you will be wearing several different thinking caps. The first cap is that of learner. You will have the opportunity to practice these thinking skills in a series of many lessons in this virtual ELA classroom. The second thinking cap will be one of teacher. In this role, you will need to be thinking of how you can include these thinking routines into your lesson design. I know that through discussions in your PLCs, you will have the time to work out this thinking and truly see that these thinking skills do become routine in your classroom. We will start by looking at ways to introduce or explore ideas. First, we have Think, Puzzle, Explore. In the introduction, you learn that this routine helps students activate prior knowledge, wondering, and planning. It is good at the beginning of a unit to direct personal or group inquiry and to uncover current understandings as well as misconceptions. For this example, let's transport ourselves to the 7th grade classroom. Let's suppose, as an introduction to Lightning Thief, you have planned to incorporate research skills to help students build background knowledge of Greek mythology. Students will be brainstorming, consulting with others, deciding upon a topic, and formulating a major research question to address the major research topic, as well as applying steps for obtaining and evaluating information from a wide variety of sources. As the teacher, you might ask, what do you think you know about Greek mythology? I'll give you a moment to think about what you know about Greek mythology. Next, you would ask, what puzzles do you have? What do you want to learn more about? I'll give you a moment to think about this. And finally, how can you explore these puzzles? What are specific words you might search for online, or what resources might we have in the classroom? Now your students have thought about a topic, puzzled and asked questions, and are ready to begin exploring in their research. Now let's play the explanation game. This routine causes students to examine the parts of something and then begin to come up with the reasons or explanations for how those parts make up the whole object or work. You now find yourself in an English 4 classroom. You are about to begin a study of romantic poetry and will be analyzing 2 poems from William Blake's Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience. The poems are a pair, but one comes from the perspective of innocence, while the other is from the perspective of experience. Your focus in the upcoming lesson will be students analyzing sensory language and its impact on meaning in literary works. Notice that the very definition of analyze lines up with the steps of the explanation game. First, you examine methodically by separating into parts, and then study their interrelations and their impact on the whole. As the teacher, you would invite your class to name the parts you see here. I will invite you to do the same thing on the next slide. You'll be reading the poems and pick out words or other features of these 2 poems that you think are important to note. Go ahead and pause this video to give your group time to read over the poems and start naming the important parts. Alright, now that you've named the important parts of that poem, think about those parts you observed and come up with explanations for why the author included them. How do they help deliver the message or theme of these poems? How do they help to illustrate the differences between the poems, one from the perspective of innocence and the other from the perspective of experience? Discuss with those around you and try to explain the reasons for those parts you observed. Go ahead and pause the video. Finally, what alternative explanations could there be? What other themes or messages could those parts you observed possibly be illustrating? Go ahead and pause to have this discussion. Now with your partner, discuss how your thinking was formed by this process of playing the explanation game. How would you approach teaching this routine to your students? Feel free to stop to discuss. We will now look at the routines for synthesizing and organizing. These routines are best used once you are in the midst of a unit of instruction. They cause students to synthesize and organize their thinking and learning around a particular set of content and skills. First, we have headlines. This routine is perfect for use with standards involving main idea and summarization. This is also a powerful tool for the debrief portion of the workshop model and will help students capture salient points from their learning. Now imagine that you are in an English 1 classroom working on summarizing expository text. Pause the video to give yourself a chance to read this short passage. Now write a headline to capture the main points of the article. The headlines routine is also a perfect fit for the debrief portion of your classroom workshop. Simply put, the students will write a headline of what they learned that day. This takes place of asking, "What did you learn?" and allows the students to be in charge of the debrief instead of the teacher. For example, let's say the students had read this piece of text and your focus was on summarizing expository text. Now pretend you're a student who just had this lesson. What would your headline for today's class be? Write your headline down on a piece of paper. Who would share their headline with your group? Now, who heard a headline that made you want to revise or add to yours? These are the types of questions you might ask in the debrief portion of the workshop model. So take a moment and think about this routine. How could it help drive a debrief? Go ahead and pause the video to discuss. Next, we have come to the routine called I Used to Think, Now I Think. This routine focuses on reflecting and metacognition. It is used to help learners reflect on how their thinking has shifted and changed over time. It is a reflective routine which focuses attention on how the development of understanding is not just an accumulation of new information, but often results in changes in thinking. You have once again transported, this time to an English 2 classroom. The standard driving today's lesson is analyze isolated scenes and their contributions to the success of the plot as a whole in a variety of works of fiction. Your students are reading To Kill a Mockingbird, and you will be closely examining a crucial passage from the novel to analyze how it impacts the plot of the novel, as well as its connection to the title of the work. At the beginning of the lesson you ask, why do you think Harper Lee chose To Kill a Mockingbird as the title of this novel? Take a moment to jot down your thinking. Now take a moment to read this passage from the novel. Go ahead and pause the video to give yourself a chance to read. Now join your small group in discussion about this passage. How does this isolated passage play into the plot of the novel? What does it tell you about the meaning of the title? Go ahead and pause to discuss. Now that you have thought about the title of the novel, read the passage, and discussed it with your peers, Take a moment to reflect about what you used to think the title meant and what you now believe its meaning to be in relation to the plot and theme of the novel. Pause the video to discuss. Our last routine is What Makes You Say That? This is a routine that we use daily in the ELA classroom to dig deeper into ideas. This routine easily integrates into the other routines we have discussed, but can also stand on its own as part of your classroom culture every day. In this routine, students never stop at providing an answer. They always are asked to push further and offer evidence and explanations for their thinking. This works beautifully with text-based evidence and OERs and pretty much every other skill included in the ELA curriculum. Imagine that you are now learning about persuasive text in an 8th grade English classroom. Note that the knowledge and skill statement for this strand includes students providing evidence from text to support their analyses of persuasive texts. Take a moment to read this article. Be thinking about the author's purpose. What does the author want the audience to think or do as a result of this article? Pause the video to read. In a discussion, you ask your students about the author's purpose in writing this article. Every step of the way, ask students, what makes you say that? Calling upon them to find textual evidence to support their answers. You can even train your students to incorporate this question or any variation of it into their dialogue during small group interactions. This strategy is not something to utilize just once. We can all use it every day, always asking our students, what makes you say that? What makes you say that? So that we can see the thinking going on in their minds and so that they are pushed to examine their own thinking in a more tangible way. Making thinking visible is especially powerful in the ELA classroom because what we are teaching above all else is thinking. Incorporate these routines into your PLC discussions and lesson design as you work to make thinking visible in ELA classrooms across Birdville ISD. Thank you for participating today. Be sure to reach out to your secondary ELA coordinator, Anne-Marie Trammell, for any support you may need throughout the year and to share how you are making thinking visible in your classroom. See you soon, English pals! This is Kristen Cavanis, Birdville ISD Curriculum Management Specialist and English Teacher for Life, signing off. I hope you have a great year.